I believe that the niche zero is officially dead. And what I mean by that is I don't think anybody's really buying the niche anymore, and I personally don't even think it's worth buying. Now, that's a crazy thing to say because it was just a few years ago that the niche zero took the world by storm and everybody wanted one. The niche zero released in 2017 and it went into production in the year of 2019. I was lucky enough to receive mine in January of 2021, right after some of the initial updates, like adding the slow feeder / anti-popcorn disc on the inside, and they added a nice curve on the inside of the dosing cup, and mine had that. I remember working so hard to get that niche. In fact, to order that niche, I had to wait a few months. And when they dropped it, I had to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning in order to place my order, and it sold out within an hour at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's the demand of the niche, and that shows to how popular it was. Recently, in the year of 2023, Niche released the Niche Duo, and this was a grinder that came with two 83mm flat burrs, one for espresso, one for pour over. A lot of people ordered it at the beginning, and I think that's because people wanted to see how that compared to something like the DF83, and then quickly Niche realized that it was way too overpriced, and the two burr sets was not something that a lot of people wanted, so they ended up dropping the price a little bit and making it so you can choose one or the other burr set. When I got my Niche Zero, I was upgrading from a Baratza Siete 270WI. This was a conical burr, and the Niche Zero was also a conical burr, and I was looking to go toward more of the single dosing thing that everybody else was doing. In the year of 2019 and even all the way up into early 2021, there wasn't really any competitors when it came to single dosing coffee. Oftentimes you would still have a hopper on it and you would have retention on the inside of it, and the Niche Zero was one of the first people to really claim next to zero retention. Now there was still a little bit in there, but it did a fairly good job. It was also a one and done grinder, meaning that you could grind from espresso all the way to pour over and everywhere in between, and it did a fairly good job at every single one of them. The problem that I had with my Niche Zero, though, was it didn't live up to the hype. Now, I want to give Niche some credit. The workflow was absolutely incredible. The single dosing function worked well. It was a very clean grinder. It was a very easy to use grinder. But the problem was I didn't really find that much of an upgrade from my Baratza 270WI into the Niche Zero. Now, I only really did espresso, so the dual function of a pour over really didn't make too much of a difference to me, as that was occasional and I would just hand grind for it and I would be okay with that. And maybe that's not how everybody else was at the time, but I felt like the improvement that I got on my grind quality and overall my espresso cups was there, but it wasn't near as prevalent as I would have hoped it to be. It was just marginally better, and I don't think it was worth jumping up from the price point of, I think, $500 of my Baratza Siete 270WI into the $750 range. Niche continued to sell like crazy, and people were spending almost double the price to get their hands on. I was fortunate enough, and at the time when I was ready to let go of my Niche, and I'll tell you why here in just a bit, I was still able to get retail value out of it all the way into, I believe, 2022 was when I sold it, summer 2022, and somebody was willing to pay retail price for it on eBay, which I was thankful for and kind of surprised at, and now they just kind of sit. And I think there's one answer and one reason for that, and we're going to get into that right after a word from our sponsors. Today, sponsoring this video is me. Please like and subscribe. That helps me produce more content. Also, if you really want to support this channel and you don't want to give a monthly payment on Patreon where I do giveaways, and I would love to grow that in support of this channel, feel free to buy my merch. I have a nice navy blue Comfort Colors t-shirt that you're more than able to buy on Etsy at a pretty low price of $30. So if you want to do that and support this channel, check it out. That would be great. Back to our video. The reason why I got rid of my Niche Zero was because of one grinder in particular. Many of you probably think I was going to say the DF64, and I'm not going to say that because I felt like the DF64 was a nice addition to the Niche Zero, meaning I had a flat style burr and a conical style burr, giving me a little bit different profiles on both. I got rid of my Niche Zero because a new grinder came to the market, and that was the Turin SD40. It was not a stepless grinder, but it was a conical grinder, and it had 40mm burrs versus the 63mm burrs on the Niche Zero. It was a single dosing grinder, and it was $200. $200. And when I did side-by-side comparisons, I did not find much of a difference between that and the Niche Zero. The Niche Zero did a little bit better, but definitely not $550 better. And honestly, when I'm looking back at it, I was like, man, you could pick up the SD40 by Turin and the DF64 by Turin, and it would be $600, saving you $130. And you're getting two phenomenal multi-purpose grinders, meaning you can do pour over and espresso for both of those. That's why I got rid of the Niche. I didn't find room on the coffee bar when I could throw an SD40 up there and it'd take up half the space and do almost as good enough job. I believe Turin has came into the market of things. I think it's just been more and more difficult for anybody to justify the Niche. Now, I still think the workflow of the Niche was great. I think probably the workflow of the Niche Duo is pretty similar and pretty great as well. But I've also heard that the profile and the taste between the conical of the Niche Zero and the Niche Duo is not really that much of a difference. I think James Hoffman, who praised the Niche early on, and one of the reasons why I bought the Niche, wasn't a big fan of the Duo. The grinder market in today's culture is absolutely insane. It's so much harder to get it's so much harder for companies to compete with low prices and so many options. We have Time More that just released a bunch of grinders. We have Niche. We have Baratza who's still doing stuff. We have Turin grinders. We have Eureka. There's so many different options of great grinders out there that it is hard to compete, especially when there's companies like Turin, who is bringing entry-level espresso grinders into the market and just making it hard to jump up to more expensive ones because of how good of results you get. And I think most of us, when it comes to espresso, one of the most important things that you can have is your grinder. If you have a better quality grinder and a cheap machine, you are still going to get better results than if you had a really expensive machine and a cheap grinder. If I used the Baratza Encore at $150, which is not even an espresso grinder, even if I jumped up to the ESP and threw it next to my Rocket R58, I'm not going to get as good of results as if I would take my Flair espresso machine and pair it with a DF83. It's just not going to compete with it, and it's going to be so much better with that DF83 than it was the Baratza, even though the machine was very expensive. So what I'm saying is, if you are in the market right now, I wouldn't go toward Niche Zero. They're going to need to cut prices. They're going to need to continue to innovate. They're going to need to probably add variable RPM. Now, maybe Niche can get back there. Maybe they can make some blind burrs which don't have the screws in them to give you even better results. But it's hard to recommend buying a Niche Zero at $700 when you can buy a DF64 Gen 2 for $400. You can throw SSP burrs on there for another $200, and you're at $600 and you're getting better results. Or for $550, you can get the DF64V. For $700, you can get the DF83V. All these are going to give you better results than the Niche, and all these are going to make you more enjoyable espresso. I would love to hear your thoughts on this video. Do you agree with me? Do you think they're going to continue to be making grinders? Do you think people are going to continue to buy them with all the stuff on the market? Do you think Niche has really been killed? Now, I want to give them credit though. They beat everybody else to the market, but they couldn't keep up with the market. Thanks so much for watching.